was on that, and I remember flipping out over Phil Wood's alto playing. And then I had an album of Michel Legrand called Le Grand Jazz, I think, or something like that. And he had Ben Webster played on it, and Miles played on it, and I think that was the first time that I really heard those bebop musicians play. And then that led me to start listening to Charlie Parker, and then of course Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Cannonball, and I later became friends with Cannonball. And
I am a friend of Pee Wee Ellis also.
Oh yeah, Pee Wee, and I played for years in New York. In the years of the 70s when I was first in New York, we played together a lot.
Alors, the last question, because I know you hit now. You projects this year?
Well, you know, I'm doing a lot of things. As soon as I leave Paris, I go to London and play a week at Ronnie Scott's with this singer named Steve Tyrell. A very good band with a great guitar player named Bob Mann and my friend Lou Soloff on trumpet. And then we play in Cologne and Berlin and Hamburg, and then we go back to New York and I play 7 weeks at the Cafe Carlyle in New York, the famous club where Bobby Short played for many years. And then at the New Year, in between, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, an album for the Japanese, play the Kennedy Center Honors in Washington D.C. and then while I'm home during these 7 weeks, I'm going to work at putting an album project together with my son. My son is a terrific singer. He lives in Dallas, so I want to do something with him, like sort of an R&B jazz thing with my son, and get some great musicians. I'll tell you, this cat we spoke about, Hervé Sam. Wouldn't mind having him play on this shit, because he plays so beautiful. Beautiful. You know, I think that's one thing. New York, of course, has got musicians from all over the world, but every city has a certain mix, and I think the African influence in Paris is something different, because they come to the music from a different place. So one thing about Hervé that I like is that he's obviously listened to blues and jazz so much, but he also has a different texture to his playing that comes from his roots, I think, you know.
Exactly, because the mix in Africa and USA and Europe, it's good music with a mix. What do you think about Hervé Sand, the guitar player?
He's fantastic.
Hervé is a long time.
I told him, I said, if we ever need an extra guitar player for the Blues Brothers in Europe, I would call him, you know, because he plays beautiful, man. Beautiful player.
Et c'est for the difference for the American people audience ou the French audience is different because the blues and jazz.
It's hard to say. You know, one thing about being in Europe is you realize that everywhere you go, restaurants and places where there's music going, it's jazz all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And but the fact is that jazz is a music that, if you look at the whole spectrum of what people listen to, jazz only is like this. I know that I have Brazilian musician friends, and I talk about, like, I'm a friend of Ivan Lins, you know, and I played on an album that he produced for this wonderful singer named Jane Dubac, and my friends, Brazilians, say, you know, I say, you're so lucky in Brazil, you have this fantastic music. And they say, yeah, but in Brazil, it's just like jazz in the United States. There's only this many people who listen to it. You know, it's a very small audience. And for my father, who's a lifelong teacher, you know, he always says that, look, the more sophisticated music is and the more it demands of the listener, the smaller the audience. And that's just the way it's going to be. So as far as the differences in audiences, it seems to me that when people are really into it, you always get a great response. But generally, audiences in Europe and especially Japan are, I think, more open and more educated a lot than music. I have a distorted view of that because I live in New York, and New York is very sophisticated. So the audiences are sophisticated too. But in other places, it's not. Although, man, we just played like we were playing in Minneapolis, you know. And,
It's incredible because
and people loved it. You know, they
we doing Saturday night Trintignant in New York. It's a big success.
Yeah.
He stay in New York because in French it's difficult, very difficult for the French club, Parisian club.
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
Yeah, that's what my friends here told me. But it's not. It's difficult for all. I tell my young students, you know, it's like there's a famous quote from one of the first counterpoint books by the musician Fuchs from Belgium. You know, it's like from the 1500s, and it's in the form of a dialogue between a student and the master. And the master asks the student why he wants to be a musician, and the student says, well, he loves playing the organ in church and singing in the choir and listening to the music, and he wants to immerse his life in music. And the maestro says, well, that's good, just as long as you're not in it to make money. And it's still true fucking 600 years later.
Yeah. The Belgium in the music it's better. It's like French. It's very difficult. It is very just the variety, reality TV. Shit. Yeah. It's very. Balous, thank you. My pleasure.
Merci.
Nice to meet you.